only on a slender leaf. The fable can usefully be read as an allegory about self-knowledge. The lion is in terrible pain, but has no capacity to understand what is hurting him exactly, and how he might put it right. In his blind distress, he acts in horrifically aggressive and threatening ways. He makes blood-curdling noises and frightens everyone. The lion is all of us when we lack insight into our own distress. The thorn is a troubling, maddening element of our inner lives. A fear, a biting worry, a regret, a sense of guilt, a feeling of humiliation, a strained hope or agonized disappointment, the rumbles of it, but just out of range of our standard view of ourselves. But there's potentially another Androcles-like side of us, able calmly to see past the fury to what the problem really is, and then calm our untargeted anger and help us find constructive solutions. However, it's not always easy. Some of the following can happen when we try to locate the stubborn thorn. We make the wrong diagnosis of what's upsetting us. We're in no doubt in pain, but we don't correctly attribute the source of the distress. We lash out at innocents, usually the kindest people around us. Perhaps we start to get tetchy around our partners. We accuse them of being dull and obsessed with domestic trivia and not as much fun as they once were. But the thorn might, in fact, lie elsewhere entirely. Maybe there's a lovely new colleague at work, and awkwardly we've developed a sort of crush on them. We don't even admit to ourselves that something so unexpected and challenging might be upsetting us. We don't know where to look for the thorn, but others close to us, who are kind, forgiving, and easy targets for our frustration, end up taking the blame nevertheless. Another option is that we try to ignore the pain. When the paw hurts too much in ways we don't grasp, it's tempting to try to numb our distress. We search out an anesthetic that can reduce the discomfort but fails to address its causes. We might take to drinking, playing non-stop games of solitaire, watching porn, or working obsessively. The thorn is still firmly lodged in place, but we notice it less. And yet the numbing relief extracts a high price. It eats away at our time, undermines our self-respect, or leads to debilitating symptoms. We might not be able to sleep. Insomnia often being traceable to the turbulent impact of issues we haven't paid proper attention to during the day. Or finally, we might apply the wrong medicine. We might come up with unfounded, confused schemes to solve a pain we don't understand. We may take to blaming our partner, the city we live in, the government, or our employer. Rifling through a cabinet of cures, we might pick a journey to the desert or a quick divorce. We decide to quit our jobs or sack someone. It can be hard not to inflict severe pain on ourselves or others when we don't have an accurate handle on our own agonies. Fortunately, there is almost always information to hand about what is really wrong. Our stream of consciousness contains a reservoir of muddled hints about our woes, which need to be gathered and decoded. The art of living is to a large measure dependent on an ability to locate our thoughts accurately and in good time, so that we will not forever be condemned to suffer our symptoms and terrify strangers with our wrongs.
Peggy's here. Hi, Peggy.
Hello. Glad to see you again.
Yes, glad to see you.
So I caught every other word of that.
You caught every other word of it?
And I'm moment, step into my office here at my home and pull out my computer.
Okay.
So exactly,
There we go.
Hi, Peggy.
Hi.
So did everyone get the gist of what was going on?
I did.
Okay.
Great.
It was a little, there was something off, but I caught the words.
Oh, okay. B, were you able to see it?
Yes, and it was semi-clear audio.
Okay.
I hear you well, Ananya, but B was a little
Soft, yeah. Yeah. So, So just to recap it, yeah, I mean, if you heard only every other word, the story is basically about the young shepherd boy, and there's this lion that's in the village, and it's terrorizing everybody and so forth. And everyone immediately, the minute they hear the lion roaring, run to want to kill this lion and defend their village and so forth. And this little shepherd boy decides that, he encounters the lion, but he's not, and initially he's frightened, but there's a moment when everything sort of changes, and he changes the way that he sees the lion and is able to see more than just this roaring lion that wants to eat him up. Instead, his fear turns to pity, and he realizes that the lion is in pain. And that was pretty much the gist of what I wanted to discuss, because there's so many times in our own life where our fear sort of keeps us from seeing what's really there due to our conditioning. Whether it's somebody who looks different than us, speaks a different language, has a different culture, has a different point of view of life, we immediately put up our defenses and suddenly want to shut that person out. So I thought that would be something that we could talk about, because our topic for this webinar is the art of living. And we don't really live when we're shutting other people out because we're fearful of them. Any comments?
I saw a video once. It was made by a young woman from Iran, and she had been brought up to be terrified of Israelis. The two don't really communicate very well. And she was just sure that all Israelis were terrifying and that she would surely be killed if ever she visited Israel. At some point as a young adult, she just decided to face the fear, buy a plane ticket, and she flew into the airport in Israel. She got out, looked around the airport and said, "Oh, it's okay. They're all like me." And the fear was gone. That's kind of what we need to do.
Yeah.
I think a great deal of this is habit. Particularly for me, I'm used to dealing with the events of my life, my experiences, just simply because of habit, and I don't reflect on them. Well, I have in my later years, but my earlier life has been one of reacting rather than reflecting, and then trying to deal with effective communication, so to speak.
So reflecting versus reacting.
Yes.
That's a profound way of looking at it, because many of us don't think about the fact that reflection is more of an inner type of work, versus reacting is something that we do, pushing the energy out, whereas reflection is usually something where we're pulling the energy in.
Yes, I agree. I don't know what it is that can turn an individual from reacting to reflection. There's something there. And that, I haven't given it much thought. I know that it happens, but what causes it to happen? And I think once we start looking at the way we're reacting to everything around us, that's an enormous step. And it can lead us almost anywhere.
Any other comments?
The video is entitled "Why Introspection is Important." So I think Peggy just absolutely made that point. And I love that she used reflection, because usually in like a business seminar, they say you respond rather than react. but I think reflect brings it to a whole different level.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Carol, because in so many of them they talk about the responsibility, and respond comes from responsibility. But reflection, exactly. Yeah, it takes it to a different level. It takes it to a more spiritual level, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Takes it really theosophical.
I agree with that.
I think we also live in a very materialistic society, and there's just a tendency for projection outwards, and less of a sense of looking inwards for reasons why people, why we have the problems that we do, and there's less of a tendency to. There's a lot of fear and in the world and in our society, and when there is so much fear, and because we live in a materialistic society and a capitalist society, there's money to be made off this fear, and so it gets very complicated.
Good point.
So when there's a tendency to sort of look to the other for the reasons why there are these problems, and there's literally money to be made off of it, whether it's the healthcare system or the defense system, then there's going to be less of a tendency to look at or promote this introspection and looking inwards, which really everybody really needs to do, because introspection is really critical. We all have these proclivities and tendencies. We sort of project outward I'm in the mental health field, so projection is going on constantly in our lives, and we get some wisdom about it when we get older. But literally the society that we live in the United States in particular does not promote this kind of wisdom at all. As a matter of fact, it really defeats it, I think.
Yeah. I agree.
So I'd like to bring up a point that's in this video that I shared with the committee members of this. One of the things that I noticed in this video was the symbology between how this little shepherd boy is connected to nature, and how it's almost as though there's sort of this ability that he has to understand that he's part of nature, and therefore is able to step back from the situation, whereas everybody's sort of huddled in their little houses and in fear and surrounded by these people who are protecting the village. And I don't know if that's actually intended in this video or in the story, but just the fact that he goes into a cave, which is Mother Earth. He's sitting on the ground, and that connection to be with the sheep and to follow his flock is sort of, what keeps him innocent. So I had brought this up as a point that, maybe there's something there, that we need to connect ourselves more with. I don't know if it's nature as such, but just the way that that divinity that's there.
I think we see everything is separate from ourselves, and that leads to a particular perspective, a particular way of viewing life. It's kind of a them versus us, and I think we try to protect ourselves, and that's part of that separateness perspective. And I think once we start to think that there may be a certain unity to life and our relationship with it. I think that's to maybe answers to the perspective that you bring up. And I think once we start seeing a little more inclusiveness, we start feeling maybe, well, our fear lessens, and we can become a little more open.
So,
And that is a part of nature. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were done. A thought occurred to me is that sort of, and this was Androcles and the lion. I think that was the story. Androcles sort of switched from fear to service, and so the focus changes from me to the other, and so that's the switch I think that needs to be encouraged. And then once that switch occurs, things change completely.
Yeah, and the video does show that it sort of has an effect even on the lion. The fact that pity is shown on the lion shows pity on the boy many years later. And we've all seen that in real life. We've all seen videos where animals are taken care of by a human, and years can pass. And in fact, with lions, there's the whole story about Christian the lion, who remembers 10 years after he met his owners, that they loved him, and he loved them back. So if we can do it with animals, we can do it with people. Let's hope.
It's easier with animals than with people, it seems to me.
Only animals that look good. I mean, like insects, or people don't have any trouble killing them.
Insects, yeah.
Yeah. Except me. Picking up the earthworms off the driveway.
I save spiders. I take them outside.
Me too, yeah.
There was a silly movie called The Croods. It's about a Neanderthal family, and their motto is "Don't never be afraid." And so they stay in the cave and they hide from the animals and all this stuff. And then Cro-Magnon comes and shows them all these different ways of being. And really, the whole story, which is, cartoon and interesting, is from changing that from fear to not to never be afraid, but to look to tomorrow and to step out and to step in. And I think when we talk about conditioning, a lot of the conditioning that keeps us back is about fear.
Yeah.
Fear of the lion, but just, the smaller fears, the anxiety fears, the big fears, I think we kind of are aware of, like if we're afraid of heights or something like that, but it's the little anxieties that, someone cuts in front of line in front of you and you don't stand up for yourself. Or you do and you're really angry about it because it's happened so much, you've reached your breaking point and then you just burst. And I'm sure there's tons and tons of other examples, but it seems like a lot of it comes from what Peggy was saying, this not realizing we're all one. But then within that, if we're all one, then it doesn't matter if you're in front of me. But the fact is we're human beings and that we don't want to be dish rags or doormats. So finding the balance for us of, what really feels like compassion, but also taking care of myself.
Can you hear me? This is Joyce.
Yep.
This reminds me, I grew up in a small rural Kansas community, and anybody having trouble along the road or anywhere, you'd stop and you'd help. And then it seemed like as you got into larger cities or when society became more litigious, it seemed like all of a sudden the conditioning kicks in that, hey, you better be cautious who you help. They may sue you. You may touch someone wrong, or you're trying to help them with medical conditions in an accident, but you may do something wrong and get sued for it. So, and now I walk downtown Denver on 16th Street Mall, and there's so many homeless. It's like, who do you help? How do you know? How do you decide who to help? Because it becomes overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been to India, but I can't imagine what it must feel like when you see so many people, homeless and hungry. But so that's the conditioning I have now, and there is a little fear about it. If I stop and help, when does it stop? How do you, anyway, those are some of the questions I deal with living in a larger city now.
And your fears are well founded, because I used to walk the 16th Street Mall too. And there were times I would almost give money to somebody. I thought, okay, this one's real. And then I would just observe for a little while, and I would observe something that made me realize it was a scam.
Mm-hmm.
So you really do have to be careful and use a lot of discernment.
Yeah.
And
And I think, oh, go ahead.
Can you say something about, they seem to imply that behind a lot of conditioning and fear and pain, or is this pain that's sort of stuck in us? And if you could remove the pain, a lot of the anger and fear would go away. Maybe you could say something about that.
Who?
Who?
No, who should say something about that?
Well,
all of us.
You're a professional helper.
Oh. Well, you know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about, well, where does that pain come from? And so many of us carry pain, and Nina could probably speak to this too, as well, because she's in the mental health field. But so many of us carry pain. And I was thinking about this morning, because I was thinking about this video and conditioning and so forth. And I was reading, actually this morning, I was reading Krishnamurti's, Mary Lutin's book, the third one of The Open Door. And Krishnamurti talks about the fact that thought is just memory, and the ego is all based on thought. So basically, we're just memory. All these things that we have within us that we condition ourselves by is just based on memory. It's not really who we truly are. And we carry all of that with us, and that's what creates all of our pain and so forth, is that we, something that, whether our parents treated us poorly, or, our ex-spouses were just abusive to us or so forth, that pain is real. And I'm not saying it's not real, but we tend to carry it with us instead of moving on beyond it. And we love to lug it around with us and say, okay, that's my story, that's my identity. So how do we get past that, of putting that, I will say that to clients is, so how long are you going to carry that with you? When do you want to put it down? Of course, putting it down is up to them. It happens in their own time, but, for those of us that are working on the spiritual path, that load gets very heavy, and especially when you want to kind of move on.
I can say a couple of things here, one of which has to do with psychology and the development of the ego, which is pretty profound stuff. I've been watching an online workshop by a South African psychotherapist who's a Freudian, and he was giving this workshop talking about essentially the development of the creation of the ego in infants, who are just born. And he talked about it, and it was absolutely profound. And this is a point in time where there is no ego at all, and you just have two drives. One drive is the libido, the pleasure drive, and one drive is the fear drive, and that's all there is. And he really believed in Freud's theories, and many people do, and some people are they really are not subscribers of Freud's concepts. But as he was talking, I really do think there is much truth to Freud's initial ideas, and Freud really was one of the basic set the foundation for many psychological concepts that are really the underpinnings of a lot of what people study in graduate school. But you just have this tiny, tiny baby, of which we all were at one point, and we're all just experiencing things that we feel as pleasurable or things that we feel as terrifying. And we fight off as best we can the terrifying things, and we absorb the pleasurable things. And we're developing a very, very fragile ego. But as time goes by, so if we're in a home where, there are parents who are somewhat neglectful or abusive, the development of this ego can sort of morph into, how can I say it? If you've got an abusive father or an abusive mother, the creation or development of this ego can sort of take an aberrant path, if that makes any sense. So a young boy sort of trying to develop a good, healthy relationship with a female, a mother, depending on how good mom is, that may not go so well. And conversely, with a young girl trying to develop a healthy relationship with dad, if dad is not the healthiest dad, that may not go so well. Right now, I'm in a group studying Gnosticism, and this is really interesting because the real focus on this is the abolition of the ego and the getting in touch with what's known as the essence, and activating your essence and activating your consciousness, which is very, 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 very deep in your psyche, and to really eliminate your ego, which, as I hearken back to remembering this online webinar, you worked so hard to build this ego and create it because it's who you think you are.
Right.
This is a very hard thing to sort of
Right.
minimize or
to modify.
To be simply even be aware of, just to even be aware of. But apparently, according to, I think, most Theosophists and most Gnostics, we've lived many, many lifetimes, and we've returned many, many times. And this is according to Gnosticism and I think other, Buddhists and Hindus. We've come back many, many times, and the goal is to really be aware of why we returned in the way and manner that we have, and to really be insightful of that and be aware of our egos. I've kind of monopolized the time here. I'm going to stop talking now.
Well, and I guess that's the whole thing is that you need, and we the Buddhists talk about this all the time. You need the mind to understand the mind. So we need, in some ways, we need the ego in order to understand the ego. And I suppose when we talk about ego, we're not talking about that thing that keeps us going in society. It's the one that sort of gets out of control when we're stomping on everybody else, or we're giving somebody the finger because they're not driving fast enough to the red light, which is happening a lot here in Chicago, and I don't understand why. Why is everybody running to that red light? What is the point?
Yeah.
I think it's the old nature versus nurture that everybody talks about when they talk about psychology. But there's something beyond that, and that's our spiritual development that is above that. And I think the more introverted or the more we look inside ourselves and reflect on things, I think we're getting a better handle. We become stronger. We delve into that spiritual perspective more. And we're no longer, or we're growing out of the idea that we're really separate from everybody. It's no longer nature versus nurture. There's no versus there. It's nature is taking over, and it's our spiritual nature, I think.
Yeah.
If we give it a chance.
If we give it a chance. Yeah.
So, did anyone else have any comments? Was there any other points that anyone else saw in the video that they'd like to comment on?
The thing that jumped out at me right away was that the lion was acting scary because it was injured, not because it really wanted to harm anyone. And I was realizing that that's why people act out too, is because they're acting from a wound. They're acting from a hurt. And it helps our compassion. It helps us to be more compassionate when we're dealing with people who are acting in a not very constructive way, to know that they're behaving that way because they're hurt.
And there's an amazing number of people that live with physical pain. I was on a hiking trip, and of the 10 of us, 3 people had back problems, had to take serious medication at night. They were still doing it. But when
Wow.
you're in physical pain, it affects your personality. It's hard to have patience with other people. I could see they were not short-tempered, like blowing up, but just making faces if other people weren't doing what they should. They needed their food right when they needed it because they had low blood. One of them had low blood sugar. I mean, it seems like demanding, I guess. And it was, but it wasn't just from being entitled or something. It was from really having some needs to be met. And we don't know because they didn't talk about it. And, one-on-one, I found out these things, but it wasn't like they announced it. They didn't want to be the one everyone looked at sad.
And it is, I mean, I think we've all experienced this when we're in pain, whether it's emotional pain, physical pain, or mental pain, even spiritual pain. It's very hard to do introspective work. Especially, I remember once after having my wisdom teeth taken out, and I kept on saying, God, please just let me have another baby versus having my wisdom teeth taken out because it was so painful. I would have rather had another child.
Oh my God.
Childbirth was nothing compared to getting my wisdom teeth taken out.
Wow.
It was bad. It was all in the bone and it was a big mess. But I remember because during the time that I was having my kids, I was really trying to stay quiet and try to stay introspective because I wanted to embrace every moment of that. And I kept trying to do that when I was in pain with my wisdom teeth after the surgery and so forth, of trying to just get to that place of being calm and meditative and so forth. And, I was getting angry with my body because I couldn't get to that spot. Mm-hmm. So, Carol, that's absolutely, completely on point. It's so very true.
And to not expect it of them. There was, I mean, I don't need to tell details about the people I traveled with, but, it helped. Once I understood that, especially about one of them, there was like this click. It was like, oh, she has a thorn. I mean, I didn't think of it that way, but it was like she's here. She is hiking in, primitive, gorgeous country, but hard to walk in, and mud and leeches, and we got bed bugs, and this whole adventure thing. That the bed bugs were the worst. Oh my gosh, they're so itchy. But once I
such a vacation.
Yeah, right. If you go bird watching, you need a vacation afterwards. You're up at 5 a.m. and it's not a vacation, but it was great. But it just helped me see. Well, I mean, So part of it was this, every time someone told a story, and this doesn't have to be about this person because I think it happens, every time someone told a story, she was listening, but she automatically came back with how she had done something better. It was like, a lot of her stories ended with, and I'm the only one that saw the bird. You know, somehow making herself better than everyone in the group. But once I understood about her back pain and, you know, having had surgery and that really there's nothing to do, I could see why she would need that validation that she was okay or that she was better, because actually in some ways she was, you know, kind of worried about making it through the day. So I think we see dysfunctional behavior, as it were, people trying to build themselves up because they're in some kind of pain also. Maybe not physical, but certainly emotional pain, like you were talking about.
I think you bring up a very good point, Carol. We judge people just on their surface reaction to things or how they are living their lives, and we judge them. And frequently we're wrong. And I think that judgment gets in the way of actually communicating with the individual, if not actually having a little compassion for them.
So then, you know, after finding that out, when she would, I would kind of maybe smugly at first kind of smile like, oh, I know why you're doing that. But then over time, to see that this was some kind of coping mechanism she had, she never put someone down. She wasn't like rude. I just had noticed a pattern, and it was just kind of like, so that's a pattern. I don't have to understand it, but if I notice it in her and it gets my attention, then I need to look at myself.
Oh, good point.
And do I have that? You know, why am I? That's a psychology thing too, right, Ananya? I mean, and guest 6, if I'm noticing something, then it's probably something in me.
Can I say? I don't know if they can hear me, but can I ask the question? What is the difference between empathy and compassion?
That's you, Peggy.
Well, I hope you stick around for the last program in this series. That's mine. But I think anybody can have empathy for another if they understand that another individual's issues are probably very close to our own issues. And if we understand that, I think we can step back a little more, and we don't have to judge individuals that way. Now, compassion, on the other hand, is a little bit further along the spiritual path, I believe, than empathy is. And I think it's kind of a progressive movement from empathy to compassion to outright altruism, where you actually don't even evaluate another individual or how you react to anything. And we can have empathy. We can feel where another person is coming from, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to try to help them in any way. And I think helping an individual is the compassionate aspect. Once we can relate to an individual, we can help them through our own level of compassion. I hope that's helpful. It'll be developed a little further.
It's just I have a friend, she's African American, and she told me once, you know, Lily, people don't understand what's going on with our race because, you know, we have dark skin and the people judge us by the color of our skin, and no matter how high we can reach in, you know, in life, they can see us. They can see our skin. They can segregate us based on that. They judge us based on that. And she was saying that her brother was driving in the highway and the cop stopped him to give him a ticket because he was black. So this is a social issue that I don't, you know, want to expand. It's just to give you an example of what is empathy and compassion. You can have compassion for that person when they explain about their race difference or treatments get in society. But empathy, you have to have same experience in order to understand in a different level, because you don't have to be black, but you can have similar situations to have empathy and understanding, as Peg was saying, understanding in a deeper level what their situation is. And also, as Carol was saying, the person who have the condition of pain, unless you have a similar pain, you don't have the empathy or the understanding of what they're going through. So I think you can be compassionate, you can donate money and think that you can help the poor by donating money, but empathy is deeper than compassion, and altruism is, I think, the combination of both. So maybe somebody can elaborate here, because this is an organization that's trying to do service, right? So it has to have empathy, compassion, and altruism together. So I just want to understand the difference and how we can just get to the altruism without the ego, you know?
Mm.
That's a little tricky, just from the standpoint of believing people are racist towards you is a conditioning also. And I know I was on St. Croix on the black side of town because my friend was black, and I was waiting in the bank, and they kept serving other people than me. So
Carol, can you get closer to your microphone? I cannot hear you. Okay, sorry.
So they kept serving people other than me, and I had the awareness to sit there and go, I don't actually know if they're being racist and making me wait because I'm white, or if it's I really don't want. And I don't know which one was true. So I think it's a touchy situation, but I know some people in South Carolina, as soon as anyone did anything, they said it was racist, and it's not always. So that's tricky a little bit. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, because obviously it does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can talk on this and expand it to a worldwide situation, not necessarily in America about black and white. You can just go to Africa or another country and you don't know their culture, but there's a commonality. Maybe the Japanese, they have the same features, the Chinese have the same features. In America, we're multicultural. So we especially in New York City where I'm working, so I can see all kind of races, and I see this is a cosmopolitan city, and in some times they express empathy, and other times they don't. They express their hate and segregation. So it's worldwide. This is not necessarily about black and white in America.
Right, and then within one's own race, there is discrimination. In Indian culture, they discriminate, depending on how dark you are. Lighter skinned Indians are considered more favorable than darker skinned Indians. But to get back to your point, I was thinking about when Peggy was talking between empathy and compassion, and this is just my own thing. I was thinking about the fact that empathy seems to be something that we do as an individual for another individual. It tends to be, I tend to look at empathy as something that we do as a human trait. Compassion tends to be, I think it takes a lot more to be compassionate. I really do. I think that we have to somehow step back from that whole thing of being human to having true compassion. It's like it really comes from the buddhi. It comes from the heart. Mm-hmm. It's something that is just there are no words sometimes when we're feeling such compassion for a nation, a group of people, animals, whatever it may be. And I think that in order to really truly do that altruistic work where there is no ego and it's something that's completely done from the heart, without words, there's no thought involved. It's just automatically done,
Right,
that's true altruism.
right.
I know that's just a thought that I had.
So what is the empathy? Is the beginning, and then compassion, and then we develop the
Yeah,
altruism.
so it's empathy, which is something that we do on an individual level as human beings for each other. But compassion is when you're able to really step back. And I think in compassion, there's only love. There is no judgment. There's no thought about it. Whereas in empathy, it's much more individualistic. So there's still that whole thing of, I know I can understand what you're feeling because I have experienced what you're feeling. So you're able to put yourself into somebody else's shoes. Compassion is where none of that exists. It's just completely heartfelt. And, you know, and altruism is the act that happens because you have that compassion. So we are actually 5 minutes behind schedule. Oh, we have a new person online. And just as we're wrapping up,
Hello.
yeah. Hey, do you want to introduce yourself? Who is it who just logged on now? Guest 8. That's all we've got. The lady in the red shirt.
Hello. Just a minute.
Yeah, can you tell us who you are?
Yes, if I can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm not muted?
No.
Okay, hello. My name is Mary Moore, and I'm sorry I'm late, but I couldn't get in this blue jeans one way, so I went and got in another way. Is this just starting? Or
No, my dear, we just finished. We just finished.
so
We were at 4 o'clock on Central Time, but you know what I have done is I have recorded this so I can send you the recording.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I won't miss it again. I'm sorry I missed it. I saw 5 o'clock and I thought it would be 5 o'clock. I didn't see ET. So on there it had to be ET and it would be 4 o'clock for me, and I overlooked that.
Where are you tuning in from, Mary?
Houston, Texas.
Okay, so you're on Central Daylight Time,
I'm on
correct?
Central. Yes.
Yeah, so your time would be the same as ours. It'd be 4 o'clock. So our next one will be at 4 o'clock.
Okay, so you came on it, right? You had to come on at 4 if you're leaving now.
Yes.
Okay, well, sorry about that. I'll know better the next time.
That's okay.
So we're on the same.
We're on the same time zone.
Okay. And I can hear the recording?
Yes, I will send you the recording. I made sure that I upgraded this so that I could record the whole thing because I wasn't sure who was going to be able to make it and who wouldn't.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Well, I'm so glad that you popped in.
Yeah, I am too.
Unfortunately, it was right at the end.
I mean, but at least I got to introduce myself.
I agree with you. That's
wonderful.
Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet y'all too. I'm wondering, see, in another course, I have to mute and unmute myself. And then y'all are listening to me. So see, I thought y'all didn't hear a word I said. So that's great. Okay. All right then. So I'll just wait for you to dismiss.
Okay. So does anyone have any final comments as we're wrapping up?
One thing I was going to offer that I've learned recently, I took a course recently, and it's helpful for any of us. We've been talking about other people who are wounded, but I think each of us on this webinar also have our own little bumps and bruises from a lifetime of living. And one thing I heard that was really helpful was that when we are speaking about any painful thing that has happened, it's important, unless we're in therapy, unless we are receiving therapy at the moment, if we're just speaking about it, it's helpful to speak from the scar and not from the wound. And I thought that was really helpful because if you're speaking from the scar, you're acknowledging that there's been a wounding, but the scar means that there's also been some healing. It's healed over.
Yeah.
It's not raw
Good
and
point.
festering and fresh.
Good
So
point.
that was just really helpful and insightful, I thought, to always speak about our own wounding from the scar, not from the wound.
I gotta write that one down.
That's
I
good.
like that.
Yeah.
You.
Anyone else?
That is a great confirmation of conversation I had with my daughter just yesterday about wounds, healing, and scars. And where did you hear that?
It was a course that I was taking on an app on my phone from a
really?
meditation teacher. And he
Uh-huh.
said he learned it from a pastor. I don't know who originally said it, but
Mhm.
I thought it was pretty good advice.
Well, that is just so wonderful that I'm hearing a confirmation of position I took yesterday with my daughter. And I'm hoping, and I just know it's going to help her because she so far feels like you will never get rid of wounds, and therefore people don't ever really get healed. And I just cannot, I can only use myself as an example. Yes, you really can. And that's what I did. So I took the position of being a scar instead of a wound. So, because a wound holds grudges and might want to take revenge and things like that, and won't go to God when they need to go to God rather than nurse that selfish ego. And it was a pretty, it was amazing that she brought it. So that was great timing. And I just wait for God to send her. Then she's ready and she brings up the topic.
Like it.
Wonderful.
Very good.
How long is this course?
It's for 3 more months.
I'm going to love this course. I love theosophy. I'm a Christian, and I'm a Christian who loves theosophy and Buddhism
Oh, wonderful.
as well as
Wonderful.
Hinduism. Yeah, because I'm reading the Gita right now.
Good.
Then you'll fit right in, Mary. I'm
Oh,
sure
yes,
you'll
ma'am.
enjoy
I can tell.
it. So, any final comments before we close?
Well,
Just
I was
that I
thinking,
enjoyed it.
okay. This is Joyce, and I was thinking, because I couldn't hear all the video, but I knew the tale, and I've also heard that the moral of that tale is that gratitude and compassion are the signs of a noble soul. And I don't want to forget the gratitude part of, all the experiences we encounter and our learnings and, and turning that into hopefully positive experiences too, even though we may be in the middle of the muck, but somehow out of that, maybe we can find some soul growth. So, and I'm grateful for all of you. So thank you for today.
Oh, well, thank you.
Joyce.
And I'm happy to be
Thank
here.
you. Nice
Yeah.
to see you all.
Yes,
Fine.
good to see
And
all of
see you
you.
next time.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you, Ananya. See you
All
at
right.
the
Thanks.
Theosopher.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yeah. 4 o'clock.
Bye, guys.
4 o'clock next month. So the
Okay.
7th of October. I'll send out a reminder.
Okay, now where do I go to get the recording for today?
I will, Mary, I think I've probably got your, yep, I do. I've got you as Mary Handy Moore. I've got your email. You were like the second person to sign up.
Okay, at marymhm@live.com, right?
Yes,
Okay. Yes.
I have
okay.
got you. So I will get the recording sent to you.
All right. Y'all have a blessed day. I got to
You
go
too.
eat to get ready for another class.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. And thank you, everyone.
Okay, how do I exit the meeting?
I think you can just go ahead and X out.
Okay, I'll close the browser, maybe. Bless y'all.
Bless you.